I feel like being very kind to the people who are on the losing side because 4 years ago when I was on the losing side, they just railed me for months and it was just horrible. And I remember how bad that felt. And I don't want to make anybody feel that way. So gratefulness, cheerfulness, and appreciation for those who it didn't go their way.
Hey, everybody, welcome to this true crime broadcast. Just kidding.
True crimes.
Just thought, keep you guys on your toes. No, this is the Jeff Heilman Project. You've tuned into the right place if you're returning.
It's the podcast for fun on Tuesday
I
afternoons.
don't really know how much fun we have necessarily, but we do talk about
we're
some stuff.
fun. We're fun.
I don't feel
You
very
didn't know.
funny.
Well,
But and maybe
I'm
today's
funny.
not necessarily the funniest subject, but we have been going through a series of the stresses in America, and this is week 3 of the month of January.
Trump was inaugurated yesterday. That might be
And
stressful for
what
some.
we are it actually, coincidentally, the third top stress in America for 2025 is the concern 69% of Americans are stressed over politics and the division and the effect that the election has had on Americans. And so I thought that 69% was a pretty high number. So what we've been attempting to do these last few weeks is to hopefully encourage you, ease some of the stress, remove some of the stress, talk about how we are, how we think about this subject, how we think about political division and the societal impact it makes. And then hopefully we can come to some common ground and some unity. On the CU Fridays I've been looking at these topics from a biblical standpoint. So if you want to tune in on Friday to see what the Bible has to say about politics, I invite you to do that. But
See you Fridays
first,
from Jessica Builds.
yes, Jessica Builds. The link should be in the description below. First of all, I thought that we could do a little history lesson, Jeff. If you didn't know this, those of you that are listening and watching, a little Jeff trivia. Jeffia. The Jeff trivia is that you were actually majoring in history, that was
that
one
is
of your
true.
preferred subjects
That's
in
true.
college before you
Majoring.
became.
Yes, I took more history courses than anything else. That's true.
And that would be considered a major. So I know that it's something that you're, pretty passionate about. And maybe you could go into a little bit of this is a kind of this podcast is about, politics and hopefully just helping
Politics,
bring people some
science,
information. So
best practices.
when did the
business.
United States become a nation?
That's a good question. I
Well,
know 1776 is the
yeah.
Declaration of Independence, but I don't think we
According to when I Googled it,
stopped fighting for a while. I think it was like
according
11
to when
years.
I Googled it, the date that came up was July 4th, 1776 is when I guess it is attributed that we became a nation.
This is going to be a kind of thing because I know the Revolutionary War, like just because we said we're a nation now, didn't mean that we actually became a country just because we said we were. Because if we'd been caught, we would have been drawn and quartered because we would have actually been treason. We would have been committing treason against the king.
Correct.
So, I don't really know when we actually became a country.
Maybe
I think
it's because of the signing of the Declaration of
1789.
Independence. You have some input, Andrew?
I'm almost positive we became a nation after the Revolutionary War, or maybe even after the War of 1812.
Yeah, I think it was 1789 was kind of the end. That's when the British
we didn't even have our Constitution until 1789, I think, or even later than that, because we had
I don't know when it was.
We had a
when was the
treaty and
Constitution
agreement that
ratified?
all the colonies had agreed to, and then that wasn't working, so we drew up the Constitution.
When was the Constitution ratified? June 21st, 1788. So I said 89 because I thought that was kind of when the British the British ran out of money. They're like, we can't keep funding this war for another 10 years. They'd been at it for 12 years as it was. And I don't know as much as I'd like to, what actually when did it stop? Right.
Right. When did
I don't really know,
when did they concede?
but I know the Declaration of Independence was such a big deal. It was the shot heard around the world came shortly after.
Yeah.
From your ancestors at the Battle of Concord and
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
there's another town too. Battle of and Concord. Lexington. And Concord.
Lexington.
Yeah, that was the shot heard
Thank
around
you,
the world.
Grandpa Trask.
That was the shot heard around the world because nobody had ever like, what are you doing? You're taking on the biggest military in the history of the universe.
Yeah.
And you think you can win, and you're going to basically fight with shovels and muskets and hiding out in bushes.
Well, it wasn't much long after that the Republican Party, this is when we're going to start talking about our bipartisan, bipartisan. The Republican Party was established. Do you know when it was established?
I think it was 1861 with Lincoln was the first one.
Well, I had it written down as 1792 was when
First Republican Party?
a Republican Party. And then the Democratic Party
The
came
GOP came way later.
1830.
The GOP came
1830.
out in 1850.
Well, I don't know that it was an organized
It was an organized
GOP.
grand old
I think that it
party,
was
Republican Party in 1850.
initially in 1792.
The Republican
See how much history
Democratic
we don't know?
Party was
Yes, the
was
Republican.
different.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
That's an
about.
entirely different unit with
Yeah,
different
so
founders.
educate us on what tell me the difference, because when I searched it, it did come up as
What,
the
GOP
Democratic
versus-
Republican Party, and that was 1792.
That's not the GOP. That's
Right,
That's
no,
its own.
No, so
that's its own thing.
that's what I'm
Well,
trying
first it
to-
was the Federalist Party, and
Okay.
that came after George Washington.
Yeah.
Because George Washington wasn't a Federalist.
He was
So-
not. He was
no,
not.
He
a
was
Federalist.
not affiliated with anything, to my knowledge.
And no, he
Correct.
didn't. There was no political party because, in fact, they wanted him to be emperor or king, and he's like, "No, I'm not going to be king. We came over here to get away from a king. Last thing I want to do is." And he could have. His political. I mean, he was. Whatever the Rotten Tomatoes score was for George Washington was super high because he had just won.
Yeah.
In battle against the British and led America to victory, and he could have had anything he wanted.
Wasn't there something? Was it you that was saying that he didn't want his portrait painted in a certain way? Like, I thought that I had read like he didn't want it.
He preferred being painted in his general uniform because when people talked to them, they addressed him as president, but he preferred General Washington because he felt that what he really did was he served as a commander, a battlefield commander. So.
Wow. Yeah, no, I'm glad that Andrew, those of you who are watching on YouTube, Andrew is very well versed in politics. I'm glad that he's interjecting in this episode. Those of you who are listening, Andrew is here with us. He's 18 and he is named Andrew Franklin. So he has got some presidentism in him as well. But I'm glad to hear. I wanted to know about like the different parties. Andrew or Jeff, could either of you enlighten me as to why did we end up invoking a two-party system?
To avoid socialism and
Interesting.
fascism.
Was it headed in that way before these systems were developed?
Well, anytime you have a one-party system, it's basically you're not in a democratic state anymore, and the forefathers were brilliant in the way that they set it up to where you've got the judicial branch,
Yeah.
you've got the executive branch, and you've got the legislative branch made up of senators, 2 to a state, and
But it
House of
sounds like
Representatives, which
these
are based
things
on.
aren't being established for like 100 years after the Declaration
Well,
of
you had the
Independence.
House of Burgesses. There was the Continental Congress that drafted the Constitution. So they were meeting. They were meeting regularly before we were even a country in order to produce the Declaration of. I mean, I'm trying to think of what the name of the committee was that founded
like
the
the Bill of
Declaration
Rights
of
and
Independence. Well,
Declaration-
before that,
yeah.
though, Declaration of Independence came first because until we really announced, like, we're not taking this crap anymore, we're done. We are dissolving our relationship with our countrymen and forming a new nation.
Yeah, the whole reason we went after Britain was that our representatives from each of our colonies were not being heard out in British
Yeah, they're
rule.
doing whatever they want. And it's like that's where we're being taxed without any representation on where those taxes go, how much they should be. And if you think about it, the tax on tea was like 1%
I know.
or 2%, and
Crazy.
we threw it in the river. We're like, we're not paying it.
Yeah.
This is
And
terrible.
now we gladly pay 10% sales tax. Yeah, but
10% sales
anyways,
tax.
that's going off a deep end. But and then we have our different judicial branches. We have our governors. Uh we have our mayors at the local level.
Yeah, it's
For those who are listening
city.
that are different across the ponds, we have our mayors. We have our senators.
Yeah,
We
you got
have
city
governors.
government. You've got districts, right? You have district representatives in city government, and then you have a mayor's office. At the state level, some would be called provinces in other areas, but the collective Commonwealth of Pennsylvania or California, whatever your state is, you would have a governor over that state, um, and then you have a president, and you've got the executive branch, which is the president and his cabinet, the vice president, the legislative branch that actually makes the laws, and then the enforcement of those laws through
So here's a question
through the
for you
judges.
for
So
I'm thinking like maybe Teddy's age or 10-year-old me. How is a president different than like okay, so if we have a president who has a Congress and a House of Representatives and all that, how's that different than the Queen with the Parliament and all of that? Like how does how does one
well, originally the Queen was the head of the church,
okay.
and Parliament is the head of the government.
But the
So
Queen still has final say?
I don't know anymore. I don't know. I think Parliament would be the legislative branch, like we have ours, and then she's got a lot of power. She's also got a lot of money, and she has a lot of political clout. Of course, it's king now. Queen is no more. King Charles. But if we look at like what does he actually do? I know he's the head of the
Well, he's the
he's the head of the
Commonwealth
army.
and the Commonwealth
He's
and
the
all
head of the
that.
church.
So yeah, how is that role different than the president's role? Because the president still has to
It's pretty. It's
is kept to he can't do whatever he wants. Like most people think, oh, he's president, he can do whatever he wants.
so
No, he kind of can't do whatever he wants.
no, he can't do whatever he wants. But I think the difference is that in a kingdom, only one person is sovereign.
Mm-hmm.
That's the king or the queen. In a republic, the people are sovereign.
Mm-hmm.
And Americans don't use the word sovereign very often,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a big delineation. I am Jeff Heilman of the Jeff Heilman Project, is the king of Jeff. Jessica is the queen of Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew is the king of Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
And because we are sovereign citizens, there is no citizen which is above us in a republic. That is the nature of a republic. It is a group of people living in a country which is governed by representative government, versus a monarchy or a patriarchy.
But they still vote, right, for the parliament, or do they have
Yeah.
a say in the
I think
vote for the
I
prime
think they do.
minister and stuff
Yeah,
like
I
that?
think they vote.
So, but we're a republic that uses a democracy to vote.
Well, democracy has a bunch of different interpretations, but effectively what a democracy is it is a system of government where officials are elected.
Okay.
A republic, which operates under democratic processes, a republic is a country of sovereign citizens. And I can't overemphasize that enough, because we just don't use the word sovereign in this country very much. But when you look at a sovereign citizen, there's nobody's above me. The president has more power, obviously, more power, more might, he has got the full backing of the military, but he's still he's still a public servant.
Mm-hmm.
He serves me. He works for me. Trump works for me. He works for you. He works for all of us. He is an elected official in representative government over a nation of sovereign citizens. And that's nothing like that in the world.
So the concern, I'm imagining the stress that's plaguing most people is this concern that their voices will not be heard
Most people?
if, well, 69%. 69% of Americans are concerned about the political division specifically within America and the impact that the presidential election is going to have on them.
Okay.
So that's why I say most people, because it's more than 50%. So it'd be most people. The concern that I'm seeing is probably based on the fact that now that our current administration has the backing of
Senate,
the House, the Senate, the this, the
House,
that,
the
that
judges.
with all of this being in agreement, that
Yep.
their individual voices will not be heard, or that their individuality, or that the um minority people will be not able to have a good representative because of so much being in agreement, like, say, the other way. But I would hope that what anybody could take away from all of this agreement would be a lack of dividedness. Like, we should be able to
We're in
be
agreement.
heading into a
We've got
unity,
conservative
regardless of
judges.
whether
We have a conservative Congress.
it is an idealism that you agree with. I would hope that everyone listening would feel encouraged in the sense that unity is the theme that we should all be striving for in any case, and that once unity as a seed is planted and people on the whole begin to get along, and each of these branches of government is now in agreement, that we're going to be able to see laws and things happening, like
Oh man,
gasoline prices
yeah,
going down and
we're
inflation
we
going
are
down,
we are at the
and
precipice right
all
now
of those
of
things.
un unimaginable prosperity in this country. I mean, Trump with Musk going through and looking at government efficiency. If we look at the pardons for the folks, 1,500 people were pardoned yesterday with regard to
COVID.
January 6th.
January 6th.
January 6th. So that hogwash is done. If you look at what he's going to do to protect the border, if you look at what's going to happen to inflation once we start trading and having tariffs and taxes, the Treasury is going to start filling up, and we're going to be able to start paying down the debt. We're going to be able to protect manufacturing in the United States like it's never been done before, and we're going to be back in a position of leadership because we'll be doing things to take care of a country which has been totally taken advantage of and plundered by.
And I would hope that, ladies, if you're still tuned in and if you're still listening,
If you
and
haven't turned it off yet,
if you are, if you're dismayed or discouraged with the outcome, and potentially feeling as if I've heard women saying that, this is setting feminism back and all these things, I would hope that you could see that through the choices that our current administration is making at putting a lot of women in high power positions in this current administration, that it is really setting the stage for a female president in the future. I think we are a lot closer coming out of this current administration and the choices that they're making at putting women in these governing roles, a lot of them, to having a female president in the
I don't
next
think
in the
I
next
don't think
8
people
to 10
are
years.
nearly as against having a female president
No, I think that it's
as
becoming.
the left has
I think
made it out to
I
be.
think that the more and more women that we have in these high speaking roles and these roles, that it is the next.
If there
It's
was
the
somebody that was
gateway
willing to
to.
do what Trump was willing to do and she happened to be a
Yeah.
woman, I would have voted for her in 2 seconds.
Mhm.
As long as it took me to
There have been plenty
bubble
of
it in.
women going back to biblical days with
Yeah,
Deborah,
look at Deborah.
let alone Margaret Thatcher and Queen Elizabeth and many others that have been very
Yeah.
strong.
Being a
And
woman does not make you fit for leadership. It does not make you unfit for leadership.
correct.
And it could go either
Yeah,
way.
I just wanted to encourage anybody who was dismayed at the current president that I believe that the cabinet that he's choosing to staff is definitely our next in having
Yeah.
a female president.
I'd
But
vote for you.
oh, thanks.
Be president. I'll be your first lady.
Sure. As long as you smile when you're up there, because
I'll
there's
smile.
some pretty frowny
you
downy
kidding?
frownies up there when they're getting inaugurated.
I
So
get to say I
so here's a little
slept with
fun
the president
trivia.
last night.
Well, you could say that any night because
Madam
yeah.
President.
Here's a little trivia for you. Who was the first U.S. president to use Twitter?
I think it would have been George W.
Barack Obama was the first
Barack
U.S.
Obama was the first
president to
president.
use Twitter. That's how
Just
close
recent?
we've had
Yeah.
Twitter be a thing, and now it's not even Twitter anymore; it's X. But still, that was
Wow.
that was
That I
just a
didn't know.
little fun,
I saw him
trivia.
yucking it up with Trump.
I know they were having a great
That was
time
great.
at the
funeral.
The funeral.
God
yeah,
rest
sorry,
his soul, Jimmy Carter.
Which
Amazing though, for a record that we had prior to Jimmy Carter passing away, we had Carter, Trump, Biden, George W.,
George.
Obama, and Clinton. Six living presidents for the first time in ever.
Which U.S. president was the only one to resign from office?
Should have been Nixon.
Really, Andrew?
That was Nixon.
Nixon.
That was Nixon. You're
Yeah.
right. Oh, this one's an easy one. Who was the 16th president of the United
That's
States?
Lincoln.
Lincoln. That's Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln.
Do you
Good
know who the youngest person to ever become president
Kennedy.
is?
Andrew, it must not be Kennedy.
John F. Kennedy was the youngest elected.
Mm.
Theodore
Theodore
Roosevelt
Roosevelt
was
was-
the first to become
That's because
president
of the
because
McKinley
of Kinley's assassination.
assassination. That's right.
Wow. Which U.S. president is known for the phrase, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself"?
FDR. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Jeez, you guys are so smart. Okay, without throwing strawberries, bananas, or tomatoes, who was the first female speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives?
Couldn't have been Pelosi.
Yeah, it was Pelosi.
Was it Pelosi? Was the first one?
Yeah, it was the first one. First
Okay. Congrats to
God
her.
bless her and happy retirement. Oh my goodness. Okay, who was vice president of the United States when Lincoln was assassinated?
It was Johnson, Andrew Johnson,
That's right.
Andrew Johnson, okay.
Andrew Johnson.
who turned out to be one of our worst presidents ever. But
Is that true?
And by the way, that is not who you are named after. And
No.
Andrew
No.
Jackson was also pretty bad.
Well,
His best thing that he ever did was bring. I think it was the first president to have our national debt at zero. That was the best thing he ever did. But
Okay.
he was incredibly
that
racist.
is good, but you were named actually after the disciple Andrew. The first disciple that Jesus called was Andrew, and that's why I named him
Oh,
Andrew.
there
It
we
just
go.
happened to be also if you're going to go political, I guess the best of them was.
I thought it was Andrew Carnegie.
Yeah, right. No. He was actually named after Andrew the disciple. So, anybody know the late American singer who was mayor of Palm Springs from 1988 to 1922? I'm sorry, 92.
Singer? Was it Frank?
The mayor
Sinatra?
of Palm Springs, Sonny Bono.
Oh, Sonny Bono. Was
Okay.
Palm Springs? Is
Palm
that what
Springs.
I knew?
He was
No,
mayor of
I thought he was the
Palm
mayor of
Springs.
Carmel.
Nope, that's Clint Eastwood.
Oh,
He was the mayor of Palm Springs
mayor of
until
Palm
he
Springs.
unfortunately passed.
Sonny Bono. Sorry, Sonny.
Okay. Where this is just fun because now we're just having fun.
We're just having
trivia.
fun.
We're trying to
told
make
you
light
this
of a
would be fun.
stressful situation.
If you didn't vote for
Um,
Trump, I feel for you. And somebody asked me today on a call with a customer.
Yes.
They're like,
With
so
a customer.
the customer asked me, so how you guys feeling about the inauguration? And I said, I feel like being very kind to the people who are on the losing side, because 4 years ago when I was on the losing side, they just railed me for months and it was just horrible. And I remember how bad that felt. And I don't want to make anybody feel that way. So gratefulness, cheerfulness, and appreciation for those who it didn't go their way. That's what I said.
Good for you. What do you have to say about where was Richard Nixon when he delivered his infamous "I'm not a crook" speech? Do you
Where
know?
was he?
Do you know where he delivered that speech from?
Hopefully on
'Cause this
vacation.
is
Camp
just fun.
David?
He was at Disney World in Orlando, Florida.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Who was the famous actor who became governor of California in 2003?
Schnarzowegger.
Ronald Ray. Wait, what are you talking about?
No, 2003.
Oh,
Schwarzenegger.
yeah, that's Schwarzenegger.
I'll be big.
He'll be
I'll be
back.
big. Oh my gosh, this is fun. Which political figure is known for the quote, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can
Ask
do
not
for
what your
your
country can
country."
do for you. Kennedy.
Mm-hmm. Kennedy.
Ask what you can do for your country.
Who was the first U.S. American to serve? Who was the first African American to serve as U.S. Secretary of State?
It's I'm like Kamala Harris. No. I can see her face.
Not a her. So there
Didn't
you
you
go.
say the first female?
No, first
Oh.
African American
Oh.
to serve as U.S. Secretary of State.
Colin Powell.
Yeah, Colin
Yeah.
Powell. You got it. You got it. Which U.S. president was responsible for signing the Civil Rights Act of 1964?
Lyndon B. Johnson.
Yeah.
Would have had to be
good
Johnson.
job.
Yeah.
Good job. Good job. I am so proud of my family for knowing all of
Which
these.
talk about a flip of political party values. Republicans used to be all
Mhm.
for Reconstruction and everything, and then during the mid '60s, it totally flipped.
Yeah. Well, let's keep in mind, Lincoln was for Reconstruction.
That's true, and so was Grant, and a few
100%.
other Republican presidents after him.
But there was a lot of bitterness in the South because they lost, and it was It was a brutal war.
So you guys are very versed in your history. We're talking about the concern being division, and that we've been very divided. I think people have forgotten that we're actually not as divided as we've been in the past. But how did we rebuild after the Civil War? How did we rebuild as a country?
Not
Have
well.
we even rebuilt to where the South and the North are
No, the Jim Crow laws stayed in
buddies?
effect. Governors in the South, I mean, had Lincoln stayed in office for another term, which he was elected to, I think that it would have.
Johnson set us back a good 10 or 15 years.
I would agree. Yeah, I think we were 30 to 40 years. We would have been 30 to 40 years ahead of where we are right now. I think the '60s would have happened in the '20s if Lincoln had stayed, because he wanted the country to heal. He wanted us to be whole and to heal.
Was it his idea? Was it Johnson's idea to segregate schools? When did that? How did that? How did we go from Emancipation
Well, basically, he had a
Proclamation?
chance to fix it, and he didn't.
How did we go from Emancipation Proclamation to now we have like black schools and white schools and segregation?
Yeah, a few of the Republican presidents who were in power were totally against Reconstruction and probably signed for that, except for Grant. Grant was the exception, but to my knowledge, Benjamin Harrison, Andrew Johnson, and a few others who were up there between the 1860 and 1930 of the Republicans who were in power were totally against and totally for segregation, which Abraham Lincoln was for segregation and for blacks being in their place and not being elected, but he was for their rights as well. He didn't want them to be mistreated or slavery to destroy them.
So how do you come together as a community coming out? Like, what would be ideal? Is it the church's place to bring people together? Is it economy? Is it business's role? Is that the role of business to bring people together?
I think that it's wise to look at the definition of the word division. Division just means separated. As far as segregation, we want to be careful on that, because there were laws that said that black children are not allowed to attend schools where white children are. There were laws that say you're not allowed to drink from the same drinking fountain. You have to sit in the back of the bus. I mean, those laws, you can't vote. So
Then things become a federal. When things are a federal offense,
or Yeah, or when the feds just say, "Hey, Alabama, we're just going to leave you alone. You guys govern
Well,
yourselves. We're going to
we
figure it
saw
out."
segregation in the sense of those who chose to have a vaccine and those who were adamantly not going to have a vaccine. That was also a
Yes,
federal
but that
implemented.
decision was not being made for you. The way that your child is not allowed to go to this school because they're black. That level of segregation, that level of division, to me, is still very strongly upheld as a belief. But it's totally rooted in fear. So if we go to what the solution is, the the solution, in my opinion, is we need to teach sovereignty.
Hmm.
We need to talk about, what does it mean to be a sovereign citizen? What does it mean to have rights, to have the right to vote, to have the right to get up and choose what job you go to work for, whether or not you get a bank loan or whether. Now, granted, some people can't get bank loans because they look sketchy or they're a different skin color and somebody's a racist at the bank. I understand that. But I'm talking about the laws that
But
protect
and
our
to your point, if
sovereignty.
you teach them sovereignty, then they can go to a different bank.
Then they go to a different bank or they
Correct.
start their own bank
Hmm.
and are able to serve people in the community that might be represented by their demographic. So we have to start when we talk about what is the solution to poverty. The solution to poverty is not getting more rich people to think about poverty. The solution to poverty is to get more poor people to think about building plans to become wealthy. So there's no right way to do something wrong. But if we teach sovereignty, if we teach total and complete ownership that says, I am a unique individual created in the image of God with total autonomy to take full responsibility for every single aspect of my life, of the things that go the way they want, that I want them to go. And then I can also take responsibility for the things that don't go the way that I want them to go. And in that sense of total freedom and autonomous existence, as sovereign citizens in the United States, we instantly start to move down a path of freedom, wholeness, liberty, peace of mind, ownership, self-effort action, responsibility, determination, self-discipline, etc. That is the answer. And if people understand their sovereignty and the fact that nobody is above them or beneath them, how can racism be perpetuated?
Hmm.
It can't hold up to the light, because in order to have racism exist, you have to have a superiority complex that says that I'm better than somebody else because of the color of my skin. And in reality, when you practice and teach sovereignty, you realize that not only am I a sovereign citizen, nobody's above me,
We're all equal.
we're all sovereign citizens, and therefore racism cannot hold up to
And
that.
gender and all of those
Yeah,
things
gender
are
inequality or any of those things.
is all
And granted, anybody could
inclusive.
say, hey, well, it's easy for you. You're a 50-year-old white guy. It's easy for you to talk about we're all equal. The truth is anybody who would say that is making a racist statement, because I can't do anything about the color of my skin either. I can't do anything about my age. I can't do anything about my gender. I am a 50-year-old white male, and I am sovereign as a citizen of the United States, just as sovereign as anybody else.
Just as sovereign as this 48-year-old female who
Just as sovereign as
happens
my
to be sitting
48-year-old female
right
who's
next to
sitting,
you,
my co-host.
and that all men are created equal. I love that.
Yeah,
That's one
all
of the most
men
impactful,
and
because
unalienable rights
the
to light,
best
liberty, and the pursuit
existence
of
is
happiness.
to coexist and to understand how to successfully coexist together in a free we're in a free nation, in a free economy of sovereign citizens. And so that's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly impactful. It also brings down the wealth barrier and the poverty barrier. It brings inner city to the urban areas, that we are all created equal and we're all created to be in this country. We've all been sovereign. And so being able to be taught that, I think circling back, you brought up a really important point, is that all stress is rooted in fear. And that when we're going through these few weeks on stress and what's stressing America and the concerns that are on the hearts of the people, I think it's important that we help to encourage those to step out of being afraid and fearing for the future and instead begin to look for the possibilities and the prosperity of the future that can come to them through eliminating fear.
Yeah, fear is the enemy.
And the best way to eliminate fear is turn off that propaganda that is continuing to create in people the feeling of fear and that they should be afraid when you really shouldn't be afraid. You're living in the best time, the best season. You're here on this planet now. You're not always going to be here. You haven't always been here, but you're here for today and for right now, and today and right now. You get to choose whether you're going to live full of fear or whether you're going to live full of hope and faith for the future. So
That's right. That's exactly right.
next, the last, gosh, I have it written down, but I don't have it right in front of me. There's one more week left in the month of January, and we're excited about continuing the conversation, addressing your concerns, and hopefully easing you through into 2025. Looking forward to talking in February about the topic, which I have not yet selected, but it'll be coming.
Yeah.
Along the way. Any last closing statements at this?
I would just say that there's going to be people out there who are upset about the result of the election, and I do appreciate and feel for them. I know what it was like, how miserable I was for 4 years, having to wake up and watch Biden talk on TV, which is why I just didn't watch much TV, and it really did. It turned my stomach, and the Kamala was even worse. And so I know there's some people that have strong opinions about Trump, and I can say that, we respect people that disagree with us and see things from a different point of view. That said, popular vote says the majority has spoken and their voice has been heard. And so for those of you who are supporters of Trump or who are even on the fence, it's party time. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I could not be more excited to have a Republican Congress, a Republican president, a Republican bench with Supreme Court justices, and to have Donald Trump alive and well and running the country. We are going to enter into an absolutely unprecedented upward movement of all things economically based, all things national security and nationalism focused. And the guy's not a dictator because we don't have a dictatorship in this country. We have a republic
And
of
for
sovereign
those
citizens.
those of you who are listening today, being Friday, on the audio podcast through iTunes and Spotify, if you'd like to head over to YouTube and pray with me, or at least come and hear what the Bible has to say about the political environment that we're in right now, that will have been posted today on YouTube, and we can just continue the conversation over there. For those of you who were just now watching it, last Friday, I had a See You Friday. And now I'm about to say, see you next Friday. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm Jessica from Jessica Builds. See you Friday. Jeff?
Jeff Heilman from the Jeff Heilman Project. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Yep. And we are so glad to have had you here with us. And thank you, Andrew, for your valuable input. Hope that you had some fun and learned a little bit of information. And we will see you next week on the Jeff Heilman Project.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.